Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 59 of Behind the Camera with Andy Games, the podcast where we shine a light on the storytellers, the creatives, and the voices behind the camera. This week, my guest is veteran talent agent Dr. Albert Bramante. With a Ph.D. in psychology and being a certified hypnotist, Albert has worked as a talent agent within the entertainment industry for over 2 decades and brings a unique blend of psychological insight and practical expertise to his work. If you'd like to support the show, head over to the About section where you'll find a link to my Linktree. It has everything from social media pages, merch, to the website, and much more. Like, share, follow, comment, or leave a rating. Every little bit goes a long way, and I truly appreciate it. Now, here's the interview. Albert, welcome to Behind the Camera with Andy Games. Absolute pleasure to have you on the show today. How are we doing?
I'm doing excellent, Andy. Thank you so much for having me on here.
Oh, you're very, very welcome. I'm very much looking forward to having this conversation. So you are a talent agent of over 20 years in the entertainment industry. So that's like a very, very interesting role in itself. What can you tell us about how you got into the entertainment industry and where your passion for that came from?
Well, my passion started in high school. I was in a drama club in high school, and then in college, while I was majoring in psychology, I took some acting classes and theater classes as electives, and I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the process. And then, after a master's degree, I, through some connections, right around after 9/11 happened, I found myself on the ground, like doing some counseling and crisis intervention with different organizations and a lot of filmmakers and actors who were doing stuff together, and it just kind of revived my interest from college and high school. So I became, like most people who work as an agent, I was an actor myself briefly. And the one thing about that I can say is being an actor that I enjoyed was just being in the environment, being in the space of being around actors. And I think that's what I found the most important and most fulfilling. And so that's where I was like, I really want to start a career working with actors and representing actors.
Yeah.
And so that's, in a sense, where that came into fruition. So I really found myself wanting to be an advocate and connector, because that's one of my strengths, and one of the things I love doing is connecting people together. And that's, as an agent, that's really what I'm doing.
Yeah, of course. Like that's brilliant. Like, and so in terms of like transitioning from being a actor into an agent, was that something that you just kind of felt natural, was like the natural progression in terms of your career, or was it that love of bringing people together that sort of made you think, do you know what, maybe this is the side for me?
Absolutely. I think that's the most important thing, is to, the really bringing people together, really helping people supporting them reach their goals is like one of the things I love to do, is to help other people kind of like reach their potential in a
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in the entertainment industry as a whole, it's something that's incredibly cutthroat. It's hard for like so many people to succeed in, and like you might find that there are people who have the talent there, but maybe they just can't come out of their shell enough, or maybe they don't meet the right people, sort of thing. Like, and I'm sure you've come across this like over your entire career in the entertainment industry, like aside from being a talent agent. And I know like there is a massive theme with yourself over the concept of self-doubt and the self-sabotage, and so you've probably seen that all. Is this something that's come from personal experience for you, or would this be as part of your doctorate in psychology?
That actually a combination of it all, because
Mm-hmm.
when I started my agency, 20 years ago, the one thing that kept coming up was a high degree of actors who are self-sabotaging. And that really was so important to me, because it was a problem that I was seeing with everything. And, with actors. Now, what I mean by self-sabotage, I'm showing up for appointments, not uh, preparing fully for in audition, like really being their own worst enemy, to take themselves out of the competition. And it's something that was happening a lot, predominantly in this space that I was working with. So that's where I kind of like really started to study that even more,
Mhm.
in a sense. So I think for me, um, that was kind of like an area when I once to go get my doctorate. That's where I was like, this is what I want to study for my thesis and dissertation. And the community at my university loved it, and so that was my doctoral dissertation on self-defeating behavior in performing arts. And that, it really was a little bit eye-opening because it led me to really kind of begin to understand,
Mhm.
what was going on here. And I was even seeing this in students I was working with. I also, have a background in higher education. And I've seen a lot of students that were really talented, but that were being their own worst enemy
Yeah.
and just not living up to their fullest potential. So that was like where it was the combination of that. I was like, I really need to kind of figure out what's going on here. So, and then that later turned into the book that I wrote in 2024, Rise Above the Script. Was really the foundation for that book was my doctoral
Mhm.
dissertation.
Yeah, like, and that's incredible. Like, and I like the point that you make, with everyone being their own worst enemy, and especially when people not reaching their potential because of that. And it is like a sort of age old philosophy, because it's so true in terms of nobody is stopping you from doing anything or achieving anything except for yourself. It all does come from within. Of course, there might be a few external blockers, but initially you're the only person who can kind of get the wheels going. Like, nobody really just falls into anything without at least trying themselves. um
Mhm.
so in terms of then some of the methods that you would use in terms to help people with self-sabotaging, do you kind of have to find out the reasons as to why people kind of have this psychology about them, or what sort of methods then would you kind of like discuss with any clients?
Well, the main reason is try to figure out what is going on, and I think the main thing is fear. A big factor of this is fear, and it's either it could be fear of failure or even fear of success. And those two fears are really what's kind of holding us back to some level. Now,
Mhm.
that's the biggest thing, and then of course we have the classic imposter syndrome that comes in there too. And with actors, especially in show business, it's one of the most. It is a very exciting, field, and very interesting, but it's also incredibly competitive,
Yeah, of course.
and it's one of the most competitive industries out there. So over time, we're noticing that these actors were, always auditioning, putting themselves out there, and just not getting the roles, or being told no, or even no, getting no news.
Mhm.
Because typically, in a traditional job search, a lot of times you get at least a letter, even if it's a warm letter, indicating that you didn't get the position. In most cases, with auditions, which are really considered job interviews for actors, there's no feedback often given at all.
Right.
So it's sort of like, okay, if you don't hear anything, you can assume you didn't get, it's like safe to assume you didn't get the job. And so after a while of doing this repeatedly, it starts to wear down the psyche of the actor, and what started out as initial like excitement and the glamour of like the skyline in New York, or the Hollywood, the Hollywood sign. What got you that glamour quickly now turns to burnout, frustration, disgust, and therefore you just almost take a very cynical look at the industry
Mhm.
in general. And I've seen that happen a lot to
Yeah.
people, especially actors.
Yeah, of course. And it's quite interesting. All the points that you make there, they relate into like even things like podcasting as well, and like everything that you've said there. Like I have seen and had conversations with so many people who have kind of felt the same way in terms of being a podcaster. Even people who want to get into any form of creative arts. So just to
Hmm.
generalize it, anybody who wants to get into any form of creative arts. I think one of the most common things that I've ever heard people say, and I'm sure it's probably very similar to what you've heard over the time, is why would anybody care about what I have to say? That's like one of the
That
biggest
that's
things I've heard.
that's the imposter syndrome. Like that's
Yeah.
really the true essence of imposter syndrome is, oh, no one's going to listen to me, no one's going to take me seriously. And now that in the past year, I've been taking interest myself in the podcasting, and the one thing I keep hearing from a lot of like circles of podcasting is only like 1% of podcasters make it past episode 10 or 20, and
Yep.
then that's it. And I'm like, that's crazy, if you think about it, because you're investing money and time into equipment, gear that you would not, and usually it takes at least 100 episodes just to get traction or really started. So, and a lot of podcasters don't, I think the same thing. Okay, you do a couple episodes and you expect, to maybe be Joe Rogan, which is not never going to happen right away. It's like, oh, okay, I'm going to have this show, I'm going to get all these downloads, and it's crickets. Well, that's because nobody knows you. It's not that nobody wants to listen to you. It's
Yeah.
nobody knows you yet. So it takes time to get. And the same thing as an actor. It may take you 100, 200 times to audition before people start noticing you. And most of the time, we just give up way before that, and therefore we just wind up quitting. Because I can tell you a lot of times, an actor will spend, go to college or go to professional conservatory, drop almost six figures for the tuition, or even over six figures. They graduate, and then within 2 years, they're done. They're out. They're working someplace else, and it's like it's a waste of time. And I've had conversation with actors, and they say, "Well, I just, it's been 2 years. I graduated, really haven't seen anything." I'm like, "No, correction. It's only been 2 years.
Yeah.
It's only been 5 years. It takes time." So I think with any type of work in this space of entertainment or content creation, we really have to look at the mindset of longevity. That this is not going to be an overnight thing. You're not going to just get on a microphone or get on the camera and then all of a sudden be a star. It doesn't. It takes a lot of work and a lot of adjustments, a lot of feedback, a lot of things, changes in order to make it. So, and very often, and especially in my industry, you'll hear the thing of the overnight success, or the breakout role that just happened to be overnight. But what you often don't see in those situations is that actor who got that breakout overnight role was working steadily for over 10 years, grinding behind the scenes, maybe doing student films, regional films, or regional theater no one would really see, but they were grinding for those many years before they actually got somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, the term overnight success is a very interesting one to me because, well, for that reason, it's like, oh, I've never heard of this person before. It's like, well, yeah, because you haven't seen anything that they've done, but that doesn't mean that they haven't put the work in. They've been consistently working for X amount of time. You might have seen them in the background of like a television commercial 15 years ago, but not really sort of paid any heed to it. But
Yeah.
like, and I think like the important part about that is consistency and sort of stay readily available within the sort of industry, because
Mhm.
there's that many people coming and going, more people coming in than going out of it, I would imagine, to the point where if you don't do anything to stand out, if you don't make yourself readily available, you'll become a face in the crowd. And that's
Yeah.
basically just it, and
Well,
some people are fine with that. Some people are happy enough to sort of just live off of extra work or maybe stunt work or whatever it may be, but just having their own place. But again, it comes back to what we were saying about people's potential alongside what their goals and their desires are.
Yeah, and there's a big thing that you mentioned there is branding. So, if one of the things that I've found successful actors do, at least initially, is they will specifically have a specific brand for this type of one specific thing. And then once they master that, then okay, maybe you can now expand and do other stuff. Like for example, if you look at the late Robin Williams, he was able to do a lot of stuff. He was primarily known for his quirky comedy,
Yeah.
but he could play dramatic, he could play scary, but it wasn't until he established himself as the comedic type, or even Jim Carrey, for instance.
Yeah.
Jim Carrey, is really known for his physical and over the top comedy, but yet he can also do dramatic work very, very well. And so I think that the important thing for any upcoming actor, and I would imagine for any content creator, is initially you want to start out with one specific area of focus. Because I think sometimes everyone wants to do everything. And that's where I think that's where a lot of people fail. It's like I want to do everything. And that's great. And at some point you will be able to expand. It's not like we're telling you you're limited for life. But it's important to kind of start out as something so you stand out
Yeah.
of the crowd.
100%.
And
Like, sorry, go on.
and you're not just stuck in and doing everything, because it's like you try to do everything, you'll be invincible then.
Oh yeah.
So, and that's where I think a lot of actors fail. So I think the important is really pick your brand, pick your essence. If you're a character actor that plays gritty and dark roles, and that's where you start with. And then eventually, once you master that, then now maybe you're stuck. Maybe that's what you'll be known for, and that's great. You can have a career. I mean, another example, a real life living example, I think of is Steve Buscemi. Now, the actor Steve Buscemi usually plays either very in a dramatic role, very shady, seedy characters, or he's the moron or the idiot in the comedy,
Yeah.
and the one that gets humiliated or picked. That's the type of roles he plays in. And he developed an extreme good career out of that. Of those two types of characters, you'll never see Steve Buscemi in a rom com, as a lead.
No.
That would be very. That would be scary, to think about.
But the
But
thought
and
the thought
and
of it's funny though. The
yeah, it is
picture of that
funny
in my head.
because it just wouldn't. It would be like, okay, this is a comedy.
Yeah.
This isn't real. But that's his brand, and so I one of the big things when I work with actors is really owning your type, taking your essence and owning it, and now you want to market yourself to that type.
Mhm.
Because I think a lot of mistakes is I can do it all, which is the mistake. What Pick one area you're good at and really capitalize on that, and then, like I said, you can go and expand later on.
Mhm. So then in regards to that, is there a sort of like fine line that actors need to sort of toe in terms of really getting in too deep into one type of role? So let's say you have a comedy actor, that's what they're known for. They might want to branch into something dramatic, but no studio will take it on because it's not believable, for example, even though that they have that in their arsenal. Like, is there a kind of fine line that actors need to toe before they kind of get fully kind of immersed into that one role?
Well, I think getting established first, like getting known for one type, and then even showing it and recording and creating something on your own that will showcase a dramatic role. Now, as a rule of thumb, technique wise, comedy is a lot harder to do than drama.
Yeah.
As far as acting technique, it's easier to do drama, and a lot of times the kind of like the standard is if you can do comedy, you can definitely do drama. It's what's more harder is a dramatic actor trying to be funny. That's a lot harder to do.
Mm.
And so I think it's easier, like, okay, if you're a comedic actor, you want to go into being dramatic. That's a little bit more easier to do because it's an easier technique. And there's some of the acting greats would say, like, dying is easy, comedy is hard. So I think the biggest thing is once you become known for comedy, and what happens is very often this is a business about relationships too. So when you start becoming established in a certain area, you start developing relationship with directors and filmmakers and producers, and it's just by nature people will hire who they know and who they like already.
Yeah.
And then you could even broach the conversation, be like, I know you have this drama that's coming up. Can I read for you and give it a try out, in this area? And you just give the audition. Or, I was about to say earlier, if you are able to, because now anybody can really film stuff on their phone because most phones have almost studio like camera capability. So put something together on your phone, get it, have someone edit it, get another actor together and do a scene together. And if you want to be known as a dramatic actor, then you need to show them that you can do drama. Because this is kind of like a visual marketing type of profession. So if you want to tell the world you're a good actor, you need to show them you're a good actor. If you want to, prove that you can sing, you need to show them you can sing. And so, even for all of my clients, it's important that they already have some type of footage, that they already have of acting, like demos. Because if I'm going to be pitching, you to an actor, to a casting director, to a production house or a studio, I don't want to just tell them you're a good actor. I want to show them you're a good actor. Because, the whole expression goes, a picture's worth 1,000 words. So the idea behind visual marketing is your message, your message to be much more complex and more, and it will land more heartedly when you can show them and they can see it. They're not imagining it; they're actually seeing it. And so that's the biggest thing too. If you really want to, that you have to produce. Like, same thing if you're a content creator and you want deals, or you need to provide samples.
Yeah.
Stuff that
100%.
you've already produced. Otherwise, again, it's not going to work, because otherwise, okay, you're great, but where's your experience? So that's another thing too, that if you want to succeed as an actor, I think you need to be content creators too. And it's so easy these days now with technology that you don't need a budget to create stuff. Just do it. And now again, it may be overcoming your, stepping outside your comfort zone, but I think you should be creating content. Like, because one thing I advise, especially during 2020 when we were all locked down because of COVID, there was the whole industry, the entertainment industry, show business industry, kind of also was on standstill because nothing was open. However, one thing a lot of actors were doing were getting on Zoom, getting on some sort of live streams together, and doing scenes.
Yes.
And that keeps their muscle alive, keeps their confidence alive, and might even help them because I know a lot of casting directors, both in the United States and abroad, were doing these online acting challenges, open calls. So it was a good way to kind of still stay immersed.
Yeah.
And now you have stuff filmed so that when the industry did open back up, which it did, now you're ready to you're maybe even in a better place than you were prior to that. So the important thing that I often tell all actors, you should all be content creators at
Yeah.
some point. Now you don't necessarily have to be the social media influencers, but you should be creating content, and because that's how new stuff is made. And so, but that takes some confidence to do that.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it just kind of adds to people on on social media creating videos, reels. It's just a sort of new way of having a portfolio to show what you're capable of, what your sort of styles of acting are, what you can do really. And I think a lot more people are tapping into that right now, and it seems to be like going quite well, whether people are picking up small roles here and there. But it's like we said earlier, that's kind of how you get into it. Like, you might have only been doing this for 5 years, like, and that's kind of like, okay, but you have 5 years worth of recorded work here, and with the right connections and a bit of luck, then obviously that can go somewhere and you can become that overnight success in quotations that we discussed as
Yeah,
well. And I think even as well, to touch back on the point that we made about self-sabotage, where people are saying, why would anybody take me seriously? I think it comes down then to the person to sort of control the narrative and be like, well, this is why you should take me seriously, because here is what I can bring to the table. This is why you should take me seriously. This is why you should hire me. This is how I can really kind of blossom in what it is that I feel like I was born to do. And you mentioned COVID as well. Like, that was a very interesting time for everybody, but
yeah.
it made me immediately think of, now I can't remember the name of it. It was there, but it's just left me. The show that David Tennant and Michael Sheen did. Um, they did like the Zoom based show. They had loads of people on it, and it was just them acting, talking, but it was incredibly funny. It was something that I think, especially on the side of Michael Sheen, like, I didn't know that he was good at comedy. I didn't know that he had that kind of in his repertoire, but he showed that in that, and that seems to have gone well for them. So it's almost as if during a time such as COVID, they have also kind of took full advantage of that and kind of helped their careers on, because it, not everybody gets so lucky.
Yeah, and exactly. But they took advantage of a unfortunate situation that we're all
Mm-hmm.
put into, and that's just in general. And I think the one thing about, especially with content creation or with podcasting, the stuff is evergreen, so it's there,
Yep.
and you never know. Like when somebody says, "Well, I've been putting content out for 5 years," great. Now let's aim for another five more, because you never know who will see something. And because I've heard podcasters who will tell me that they've had episodes out for 3 or 4 years, and they're still getting press or notice about it. People are listening to it, or checking it for the first time, and they're like, "Oh, hey, those episodes, you 3 or 4 years ago," and you never know
Yeah,
what might happen. Because I think a lot of times we're so accustomed to that instant gratification or an instant feedback, and you may not get it in this type of work initially in the beginning, but you never know. It takes a lot of time to do that.
of course. And I know that's something I've certainly fell into. Like, whenever I started out doing this, not that I expected it to be any overnight success, but any particular guest that I had, especially given the audience I was interviewing right at the start, people would have turned to me and been like, "This could be huge for you." This, and I'm like, well, I mean, I'm not banking on anything, because I don't want to. Well, one, I don't want to disappoint myself, and two, like, even if it's not, it's there. Like, it just takes that one. Like, in podcasting, it takes that one episode. In acting, it takes that one audition. Or if you're content creating,
Yeah,
it takes that one video for the right person to see it. And it's yes, okay, you should believe in yourself. You should believe in what you're doing. You should put 100% into it. But there are times where it's like, you shouldn't necessarily count your chickens, as it were. And like, people have said this to me before, and it's actually kind of funny to go further back to what we were saying at the start. Like, I got to like a year of doing this recently, and like, for me, that kind of felt like, oh wow, this is huge, this is amazing. I feel like I've been doing this for ages. But the amount of people I've spoke to in the last 6 months who have so much more experience, even just in podcasting alone, it's like, that's where I kind of fell into, I've only been doing this for a year kind of bracket. And I'm like,
yeah,
I feel so much better for just putting it that way than thinking, I've been doing it for a year because it's like, well, okay, cool. Like that's yeah, good luck. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
and that's the thing. You only be doing it for a year, and that's because again, we're so accustomed to like, okay, I'm gonna do the first couple episodes, or I'm gonna do this couple auditions, gonna be in this little film, and now I'm not gonna be waiting for the offers to come in, and it's not gonna happen that way. And you never know. You never, but I can also tell actors, because when actors will say, well, I've been doing this for 3 years, I'm like, but I can tell you your big break will never happen if you quit. That'll, you can guarantee that will never happen if you stop doing it.
Of course.
And, I remember I had one, business podcast, because ever since I've been having this podcast, I'm getting a lot of business ads for like podcast coaching and podcast consulting. Most of them are just, yeah, okay. But there was one that said like, you know, can you make six figures as a podcaster? And which I thought the ad was really effective. And it said the answer was, I don't know. I can't guarantee that. But I can guarantee if you don't podcast, you won't be making six
Very
figures.
true. Very true.
And I'm like, that's there you go. It's one of the most honest ads I've seen. Because again, if you don't do anything, and it may not happen. So
Yeah. Like, exactly. Like it is that's as honest as it gets because like, can you do this? I'm genuinely asking kind of thing. It's not like a sort of hypothetical. It's just like there's only one way to find out, and that's kind of by doing it. And I think that's a good philosophy to take. Is just like, I know it's very cliche, but you always regret something that you don't try. Even if like the idea of
oh,
it scares the hell out of you, you
yeah.
still want to just kind of. I think you'd rather live your life knowing something didn't work out, but that you tried to do it, than
Oh
actually
yeah.
just wondering what could have been. And like, to go back to the idea of self-sabotage and in terms of what you do, like, does it get to a point then with some of the actors you've worked with, like even just in a general way, where they can overcome their nature of self-sabotage, but it gets to a point where they kind of tip to the point where they may become overconfident? Like, does that happen with actors?
Well, there's certain that overconfidence is an issue too, but I think a lot of times the overconfidence is arrogance. Is that you think that you're better than everybody else. You don't need
Mm-hmm.
any more training. You're everyone should just hire you because you're talented. You believe you're talented and that you're and that's a self-saboteur in itself, is the overconfidence, because well, I can tell you that's the fastest way not to get hired, is to be arrogant like that. Because also part of being successful as an actor is how good are you to work with.
Yeah, of course.
Ta- talent is great and important, but also it's like, how are you on set? What's your behavior like on set? How are you? How do you work with other actors? Because if you have a reputation of really being difficult, unless you're like a super A-lister, but if you're up and coming and you're difficult to work with, you're gonna find yourself in a hard time.
Mm-hmm.
Even in the matter, you could be again very talented and very good, but if you're not easy to work with, that's not going to work either. And I think there's nothing wrong with being confident. And I think sometimes we get messages when we're growing up that, oh, we need to be humble and that we shouldn't be bragging. But I don't think there's anything wrong with the occasional brag.
Of course.
That of being proud of yourself for doing something and knowing that you're good at it. There's nothing wrong with admitting that you're good at something. Now, the only time it becomes a problem when you start to think, okay, I'm the best person ever, and everybody else is, not, up to par. So when you start to think you're better than other people, that's when it becomes a problem. And I want to go back to something you kind of said earlier about regret and all that. And it's most people that, and this is getting a little bit heavy, but a lot of psychologists had looked at people at the end of life,
Mm-hmm.
at the end of their life, when they're on their deathbed. And the most people that have the most difficult times, especially in this part of their life, are the people with regrets. And the biggest regrets are not the mistakes you made or not the things that didn't work out. It's the opportunities that you missed, the
Mm-hmm.
things you didn't do. Like where you had an opportunity to do something, but you didn't do it. Maybe you had a fear, or maybe you had or whatever logical thing you kind of concocted in a sense, talk you out of it. Because the one thing about the brain is it's very good at talking us out of stuff that we fear.
Yeah. Oh, so true.
Very easy. Very easy to talk yourself out of stuff that you should be doing because it may be a little uncomfortable.
Yeah. So from like a psychological point of view then, is there something with humans that when it comes to regret that there it's obviously like you said, it's more around the things that people didn't do that they regret, and that kind of has a more lasting effect. But is there like a line between that and the fact that with things that you like decisions you made that you might come to regret, things you did that you can get closure on? Is there like a kind of line that where closure plays like a massive part in what we have as regrets as humans, if that makes sense?
Well, I think the closing line is like you did your best. You did it. You
Mm-hmm.
took advantage of that opportunity, and that you should be proud of. And maybe the situation didn't go exactly the way you thought it was going to go, but the fact is that you took action. The fact is that you did it. Because otherwise, it's like if you don't do it at all, then you'll never know.
Yeah.
And I think it's the idea that the thing about the regret so much is that not knowing. Well, you don't know if that would have happened because you never tried it. So you don't know if that was the case. And also when you're doing stuff and it doesn't maybe not land or go the way you want to, rather than quitting right away, it's like maybe figure out another way of doing it, like another angle before you say I'm gonna put the towel in any
Yeah.
endeavor. And you got to give it enough time too, because again, I think we're in a generation now where we want everything to be instantaneous,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
it's not. It's not. It's not going to be instantaneous.
No, of course. So then what would you say then? Do you think that there is a something within humans where whenever it comes to something like they put all of their work into, but it doesn't work out how they wanted it to, where they still regret it? Like, is that just kind of another self saboteur, or is that just down to the person that they might just regret something not working out despite the work they put into it, but almost a case of not being sort of humble about the taking the opportunities?
That's possible to a degree, but it's much less than not.
Mm-hmm.
Than not doing it. Than just because of fear or life got in the way and you just
Yeah.
put it aside. You know, Even if it didn't work out, it's like, well, I'm bummed it didn't work, but at least you tried.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas if you didn't try at all, you can forget. That's going to be regret.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. I only asked, just the topic absolutely fascinates me because it's something I personally have kind of been thinking about in terms over the last like 6 months in terms of just like regret, um, closure, things like that. So like that's it's just fascinating to me. And it's I think like to a degree every human lives with regrets. It's just how far they carry them and what they really
Right.
do about it. Really, I think like that's something that I
Mm-hmm.
personally have learned over some time, and is just we all regret things we've done, but
Mm-hmm.
it's to a point that just might not matter. You can
Yeah.
just let go.
Well, and that's the whole thing too. Is learning to let go. But it's easier to let go of something that you tried and didn't work out than something you didn't that
Yeah.
you missed out on. So it's much easier. I think you would much rather have the other scenario where you tried it and it didn't work, and you gave it, the good college effort because there's a good chance that maybe something else came out of that. Another opportunity came out of that because you took that initial action of trying to do, the initial thing you wanted, but then maybe something else came out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. Like, so then would you say then there to a degree that missed opportunities could possibly be a form of self-sabotage, obviously dependent on the circumstance?
Absolutely. Well, it depends on the missed opportunities because maybe you had a fear, you didn't take
Yeah.
it, and so therefore you we're engaging in self-sabotage
Yeah.
by not engaging in that. So, and the thing about it, again, is with self-sabotage, it's not that people are consciously doing it.
No.
Nobody knows that. It's not like you're walking around saying, today I'm self-sabotaging. You don't know you're doing that. But you can eat your conscious mind, again, is there to protect you and to keep you safe. So if it's uncomfortable, whatever action you take or that new thing may be initially uncomfortable at the beginning, it's easy to talk yourself out of it.
Mhm.
Very easy to do that.
Yeah, definitely. And like I think with self-sabotage, that's another very interesting topic for me personally, because it's something, as a creator, as a podcaster, it's something that I've kind of, well, I mean, people tell me that I've been doing it, and then it's when you think about it, it's like, yeah, I probably have, to be fair, out of like whether it comes to like fear, self-doubt, whatever it may be. But I notice it with a lot of other people, and particularly content creators now, because content creation is something that so many people want to do full time, and it has become such a hyper competitive thing, but
Mm-hmm.
more instantaneous. Like, we were just saying, where not everything has to be instantaneous or can be instantaneous, but content creation sometimes just is. How the algorithm hits you, whatever it may be, bit of luck, there's all sorts of things. But like, even friends of mine who create content, they're, and you look at the numbers that they get. They get so many views, they have all these followers, they make X amount of money, they get brand deals. It's like, you're not failing at this, but you're telling yourself that you're failing this, because if it does actually happen, even if the chance is the chance is so small, then it's like you want to be right about your own thoughts. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy almost.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
100%. Yeah.
yeah, it just
It,
fascinates me.
it, it certainly can be. And therefore it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And what happens very often, I think, part of that is your identity. If you have the identity of a person that's always having bad luck, it's, well, it sounds counterproductive, but we're going to do everything we can sometimes to hold on to that.
Oh yeah.
And therefore, it's like, if I don't do something, I can point out to you how easy it is to point out, see, I told you that wasn't going to work. But I'm like, and then sometimes I want to tell the same person, you didn't even try, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's unfortunate, but that's their identity. If your identity is that. So even going back to with actors, the one thing I try to really work on is how do you refer to yourself? And for some reason, the idea of pain and art have been brought together.
Mhm.
I must suffer for my art, or I must be a starving artist or a struggling artist. Well, who said that? Why can't you be a thriving or powerful or working artist? So I think a lot of times we're also going to really work to confirm our identity. So a lot of times we want to get someone out of self-sabotaging patterns. We have to sometimes change your core identity.
Yeah, of course. Like, it goes back to what we were saying, where self-sabotage, all these sorts of things, it comes from within. Like, whether it be, yes, you kind of had like a particular upbringing or like a bad past or anything, things have affected you, but you're the only person who can take yourself out of that. Like, there has to be like an element of proactivity to sort of drag yourself out of this and just really believe in yourself that you can succeed, and really kind of just, well, we've, like, a big sort of theme of this has been like living up to your potential. So,
Yes.
so outside of the acting side of things, then, you are also a certified hypnotist, and I know you bring a lot of these self-sabotaging philosophies into this. So, what can you tell us about then your origins of becoming a hypnotist? Like, obviously, I understand there would be the crossover with psychology, but hypnotism, again,
Yes.
fascinating. So, I'd love to hear about that.
It's really fascinating. And when I was studying psychology, when I was in grad school, I was hearing about some of these radical approaches to therapy, which are solution focused, very quick, rather than long drawn out, talking about your feelings for 8 to 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I've always been drawn to that type of work, solution focused. So that's what kind of got me into with hypnosis, because it works at limiting beliefs in your subconscious mind. And that's why hypnosis is very powerful, and it is working with your subconscious mind, which which is where your identity is rooted into,
Yeah.
and which your way of relating is rooted into. And I believe that's where self-sabotage lies into. So a lot of times it's about really going deeper and going beyond just talking about your feelings, but really figuring out the patterns that are going on underneath.
Mm-hmm.
Going underneath the hood, so to speak, like if we use the metaphor of a car, figuring out what's going on deeper, what's the deeper programming going on in your mind, and working on changing that. Because when you change that, then everything else will start to change.
Yeah. So then, would it be
So
looking at like
looking
the
at yourself
cause of
as,
it? Sorry to interrupt there.
well, I was going to say, looking at your core pattern. So if I wake, and it's very simple, like language is so powerful, the words we use. If I wake up and let's say I stub my toe or I bang my, all of a sudden I'm like, well, today I'm having a bad day. And now my brain and my nervous system is going to be looking for opportunities and instances to confirm that I'm having a bad day. And so that's why very often people who have these bad days will notice things happening in succession, unlucky thing. Now, on the other hand, we also have a choice of saying we're having a good day. And when we start really internalizing the idea of what a good day is like, and that it's possible to have a good day, even when we have some things that we don't like being thrown at us, our brain and nervous system would look for that. But a lot of times it's really uncovering subconscious mind. And a lot of times how we approach this is due to our programming from growing up.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you grew up with a critical parent or a disapproving parent, or even in a situation where you might not have been your parents' favorite child. Maybe your brother or your sister was their favorite. And you always kind of felt like you were living in their shadows or their coattails of your brother and sister. And so therefore you just now approach all of your life the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And you're repeating the patterns. So again, with hypnosis, we can kind of maybe uncover that reason and that link, and now kind of change the narrative behind that.
Yeah, of course. That's very interesting. Like, it's very interesting of how deeply rooted these things are in terms of how people build patterns into certain things. Like, even take like addiction, for example. And even like caffeine addiction, people are like, I need to have a coffee every day, otherwise I can't function the same way. Like, that's I know I wouldn't say I'm addicted to caffeine, but like, I know, for example, if I don't have a coffee of a morning, I'm like, I notice that I notice something is different, and I'm just kind of like, but then like I get like about maybe an hour later, I'm like, why did that matter? Why did that matter? That I didn't get this part of, but then even like at the same time, like thinking about that being like a particular thought at any point of the day, it really is a bit benign, really, isn't it?
Yeah. No, and exactly. That's exactly what's going on there.
Yeah, like it is just fascinating, especially how like these things, how far back these things go. Like, because like I always like kind of think sometimes like, where, let's say if you have a bad day or you're just feeling a bit mentally low, but you can't really pinpoint a reason. It's like, you know what, you don't have to necessarily know why, because it's okay. It's valid in terms of. But like, the interesting thing is there probably is a reason. You just need to really kind of dig a little deeper. Maybe you think you actually know it but don't want to accept it, but maybe you just have to kind of accept, okay, well, here's the common pattern as to bad day, past experience. Maybe this is it. And like, I sometimes think unresolved trauma is kind of a huge thing in terms of why people kind of build these
100%.
habits.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It definitely is unresolved trauma most of the time. And so that's again another advantage of hypnosis, kind of healing from that and identifying, because a lot of times you may not even make that connection,
Yeah.
because a lot of people think trauma is very sensational. Like it must be something like really grand.
Mm,
And very often it's not. It could be simple day in the life traumas that just build up over time, little things. And
100%.
most people sometimes may even, our brains may encode trauma responses to things that we don't even realize. Like, I never realized that really affected me. I
Yeah.
never realized that. So that this was a trigger for all of that.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I can actually give you a story that a friend of mine told me a while ago that's very, very similar to what you're saying. So my friend had like a very, very rough upbringing. Like, I won't go into too much detail, but like, very abusive from one of his parents, very
Mhm.
abusive, and it was just a horrible, horrible situation for him. And
Okay.
he basically just rebelled. He kind of he just turned to like alcohol and drugs from a young age, and
Mhm.
bit of delinquency as well, as a teenager. And so he was in this sort of group therapy session with a load of people from, I'm guessing, the young age, so maybe from about 7 or 8 years old to 15, 16 or something like that, like a minor group anyway. And so he obviously had all of this trauma that he was kind of pushing away and was just angry about, but he was in this group therapy session. And there was this young child who he told me couldn't have been any more than 8 or 9 years old. And they were so broken up. Like, you just like looked at this child and thought, my God, what has happened to you?
Mhm.
And what this child was in therapy for was they had simply just seen a cat lying dead on the side of the road. That's all it was. But that just affected them in such a way that they
Mhm.
needed to they needed to get that help. And like, and my friend told me, he was like, that was the day that like he really learned perspective. He really learned like, wow, like, you know, if you're feeling
Mhm.
something, you just gotta kind of acknowledge it. You've gotta kind of fight against it. You have to kind of learn to, well, you just kind of have to face what it is, let go of it, and just kind of
Mhm.
healthily move on.
Right. That's the only thing you can do. You just gotta move on and but at the same time process it, because again,
Yeah,
just having those conversations and just knowing is half the battle most of the time. Just like
100%.
realizing, like linking that, like he might have had this incident of like, okay, I'm not getting these responses. I don't know why, but now he knows. Okay, it's just seeing the cat on the side of the road. Now that's a big thing. That's a
Yeah,
clue right there. Now you can start to heal from that. And a lot of people are a lot of times when people are like really do this deep insight or surprised, like, or they're like, I remember this, but I didn't think it was going to be that. I didn't think it affected me that much.
hmm yeah,
Because and it did. It really did. And until you handle that, that's the only way you're going to really sometimes get
yeah,
out of that.
definitely, definitely. Like in something I find with people as well, like something completely unrelated to what they might have ever gone through in the past that might not have on the surface seemed to have affected them. Something completely unrelated comes along, and that's where it all kind of spills out. And like,
Hmm.
I think it goes back to the whole importance of, you have to acknowledge the root of the problem, the root cause of what it is that's sort of, well,
Hmm.
doing these things to you on like a
Yeah,
mental level.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Albert, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on Behind the Camera with Any Games. Thank you so, so much for your
I
time. I've had a
want to thank you
great
so much for
conversation.
having me. It was a great combo. I'm
Thank you.
glad to be here.
I really, really enjoyed this. Thank you so much. Just before we wrap up, I would like to give you the floor to let the listeners know where they can find you.
Sure. Well, you can certainly follow me on socials, Instagram and LinkedIn, but I will also encourage you to go to my website, albertpermonte.com. And I have a lot of audio recordings on the website, like So you can get a taste of hypnosis, and they're brief downloads. They're 15, 17 minutes each. So you can listen to them on a daily basis. And they're for anything from leadership to sports performance to public speaking confidence to, sleeping better. So there's almost stuff there's something for everybody on there. So I encourage you to check out my recordings and get in touch with me. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Yes, make sure you definitely check out Albert's work. And Albert, once again, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute incredible conversation.
Thank you.
And there you have it. That brings us to the end of episode 59 of Behind the Camera with Andy Games. Huge thank you to Dr. Albert Bramante for his time, sharing his story, and providing his incredible insights into the human psyche, performing arts, and how the two can mesh together. Once again, if you'd like to support the podcast, my link tree in the About section has everything from socials, merch, website, all of the good stuff. A follow, rating, share, all goes a long way. Until next time, take care, stay creative, and I'll see you soon. But until then, peace.